And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to your 188th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. It is to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for Indiana University sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this episode of the Hoosier Sound on March 23rd, 2021, where I am your host, Matt Lukens. Here with me tonight is Indiana HQ contributor Jevan. If you would like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ, as well as our partner at the Hoosier Sound. Head over to our website, indianahq.com, for everything in one place. All right, Hoosier Nations, it's time for some sports talk. So originally, this episode was supposed to be about tournament talk and coaching search talk and some women's basketball. But earlier today, Armaan Franklin put his name in the transfer portal. His mom told the Indy Star, it's more just to explore options to build relationships. It's not, I'm out of IU. That's not the message we want to send to anybody or everybody. So, Jevan, first off, how are you doing? And secondly, what's your thoughts on the Armaan news earlier today?
Well, first things first. I mean, it's the biggest podcast as far as, it's been the best week of basketball we've had all year, and it's just me and you. What's going on? Where's everybody at?
Everybody's taking a week off. They went too hard this weekend. They had to take a couple days.
No, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that I'm able to be here on this episode where we can talk about all the good basketball we saw in this past week and the news that hasn't broke and the news that has broke. But with Armaan Franklin, he's doing exactly what he should do. He's taking the precaution of, well, if it's not a coach that fits my game style, my style of play, or if his vision doesn't line up with mine, let me go out and create these relationships with other coaches just in case, to where, like I said, if that coach comes in and it's not who fits Armaan's style the best, he will be able to have other options as far as who he can go play for. But, I mean, I see this as an opportunity in the future if Armaan does leave for players like Parker Stewart or Christian Lander to have that big breakout season. So while I look at it as it hurts this team tremendously, second leading scorer, one of the biggest up. He boosted his game more than anybody else did in the Big Ten this last year, in my opinion. A thin backcourt got a lot thinner if he does leave, but it does give other players, potential to have that season that we've been hoping for them to have.
For sure. My thoughts were yours exactly. At first, I was like, oh. I woke up this morning to the news. It's like, oh God. So, oh no, like he's transferring. And then once the fan in me, I ticked over to the solid basketball mind that I have, or I like to pretend that I have. Some of you might not agree. But I thought about it for a second. I was like, these are the kind of players we want. This is responsible. This is a responsible take on the situation. Put my name in the portal, see what's happening. He didn't declare he was leaving. He didn't declare anything. Put his name in his portal. It's the same reason why everybody should declare for the NBA draft and go and hear from agents and scouts and whatnot from the draft, because they can only get good info and improve over the summer doing that. So I think this is great for Armaan. I'm sure he's going to get some really good offers. He's up there at some of the top names in the transfer portal right now, which is popping off. Not Hunter Dickinson, but 5-star freshman from Walker Kessler from North Carolina just put his name in the transfer portal earlier. I think somebody from Steph Curry's school put their name in the transfer portal. Davidson. Yep. So it's popping off right now. So he'll be a hot commodity, I'm sure. And I'd be interested to get a story from him later on when he comes back to IU, because I have this positive view that he's going to be back in Cream and Crimson, about what coaches he heard from and who was interested in him, because he's that good of a basketball player, and we're real lucky to have him here with the Hoosiers.
Yeah, in our group chat, someone mentioned that Chris Mack's first scholarship that he handed out when he got to Louisville was possibly to Armaan Franklin. I mean, the options for Armaan are probably going to be very, very, very prominent schools within college basketball. I mean, he has shown that he could play at a very high level, and I mean, I just feel like a lot of schools will be interested and probably will be reaching out to him. Like you said, he's up at the top of a list of a transfer portal list that's pretty long and was probably going to get a lot longer with, the extra year of eligibility being a factor this upcoming year. So I think that list of teams is very long. And again, like you said, once that fan kind of left my system, it was like, okay, Armaan's doing exactly what he needs to do. And, like his mom said, it's not that he's not coming back. I truly believe that Armaan and his family love Indiana, and I don't think they want to leave Indiana. I just think it's a precautious type of thing.
Do you think anybody else is going to leave, Jevan? Do you think there's anybody else in the portal? Again, this is all speculation, right? No, not that you hope anybody leaves, but do you expect anybody to be in there?
We'll see. If you were to ask me this question a week ago, before Armaan says he was gonna enter the transfer portal, I would have said Rob Finney. Just because of his play style hasn't really fit in with the way Indiana has wanted to play basketball the last few years. But again, that's changing now. We don't have a head coach. We're looking for a new head coach. And as AD Scott Dolson said, looking for a coach that's going to inherit the new play style of basketball. So while I would say, Rob, you really have no idea at this point because it's so up in the air. I'm hoping Christian Lander stays. I don't see any reason as to why he would want to transfer because with the extra year eligibility, he's basically a freshman again. So he doesn't really lose anything. But I don't know. It's definitely something to keep your eye on moving forward.
Definitely. And speaking of keeping your eye on something, we might have a coaching search going on while the players are transferring. Yes, you might have missed it. We might have had a fake physical for Thad Matta this week. Brad Stevens said no. Did you see that? Our Lord and Savior Brad Stevens said no. We're talking about Calbert Chaney now. The coaching search has gone everywhere from former players to coaches that don't want to coach anymore to an NBA head coach that's in the playoff hunt. I don't have to explain this too much to you folks. But Jevan, I'll go back to you again. It's just the two of us. What's your thoughts on the coaching search so far? Is your prime candidate still out there, and if so, who is it?
So I kind of said this right before we went live, but I'm at the point where there have been so many rumors and so many air quote leaks that have come out that I really don't 100% believe anything now until it is going to be set in stone, until it is announced by Indiana University who our next head coach is. But with that being said, I think that Indiana needs to go in the direction of someone who is coaching right now at a successful school.
Yeah.
And when you look at those options, the names that pop out are Scott Drew, Chris Beard, someone like Nate Oates. By the way, Alabama, Nate Oates, I would give him as much money as he asked for.
Yep.
But realistically, I do think it's going to be someone we saw coaching an assembly this last week, Chris Beard. He's my option to be our next head coach for Indiana men's basketball. Why Texas Tech would let him go? I mean, in 4 years, he's been two Elite Eights, a Final Four, and then coached in the most recent national championship game. I don't know. There's, of course, the name like John Beilein, who is, retired. Well, retired. He was Michigan's head coach and then tried out the pros, and that didn't work out, obviously. Right. But then you throw out Brad Stevens, and you say that he said no, and he said no twice now, but what is he supposed to say? I mean, he can't come out and say, you know what, actually, at the end of the season, I am going to stop coaching the Boston Celtics, and I am going to take that Indiana Hoosiers head coaching job.
Yeah.
That's just not realistic for him to ever say. And like Nick Saban said 12 years ago, I'm not going to go and coach Alabama. Still coaching Alabama. Yeah. So you can't count Brad out, but at this point, I think a lot of Indiana fans are moving on from that story and looking at the more realistic head coaching options. And for me, that would be Chris Beard.
Yeah, I agree. I think the longer this coaching search on, the more you can talk yourself back into Brad Stevens being a possibility. Of course, the longer this goes on, the higher the chance that we lose somebody like Armaan to a transfer because, again, there's a lot of uncertainty. That you got to start working for, off-season starts soon, right? And once the season stops, off-season starts, and they're going to be looking for new system and a new coach then. So hopefully this is over by the time that's the case. Most coaching hires, by the way, the last 3 times I a coach has been around the 29th or 30th of, I believe, April. Or
no,
March.
it was March.
It was March, right?
Yeah,
Sorry,
Zach Osterman tweeted out the last 3 days, and it was 29th, 30th, and 31st of March.
Yeah. So that's the last 3 coaching hires have been around about a week from now. So probably a week from now, we will know who's next head coach. It would be great for us because that's a Tuesday. We normally have a show on Tuesday anyways. So I mean, I'd appreciate it if they didn't break from the schedule. We didn't have to do another emergency podcast on a Monday again. But yeah, no, I agree with your Nate Oates take, by the way. I think I tweeted on Twitter last night. By the way, our Twitter handles, if you're on the YouTube stream, are right there. Go follow us on Twitter. I tweeted last night, like, I'd give my left foot for Nate Oates to be the coach of IU. I don't take that too seriously. I'm not going to cut off my left foot, but I'm serious. Like, he plays such a fun style of basketball. There's no reason why, like, all the high school seniors, they don't watch regular season college basketball for the most part. They'll watch regular season NBA because that's who they want to grow up being. But they all watch the tournament, and I guarantee you, they all watched Alabama play their games this weekend and went, wow, that looks like a lot of fun. Like, Jevan Quinterly went to Villanova, right? Like, Nova's one of the best college basketball programs in America, and left for a multitude of reasons. I wound up at Alabama and looks like such a good player for Nate Oates. He's so much fun to watch. That whole team, they play so well together that they play such great offense. They move the ball. They share it. They play with really fast pace. It's a joy to watch. And he did the same thing at Buffalo. Like, this is not just a one-off thing. He was doing – this is how his Buffalo teams played, and they made it to the round 32 Sweet 16 with him. And then he got hired at Alabama. He's been there for 2 years, has turned it around. They were like – Alabama was a pretty okay program. They were like a fringe tournament team almost every year before Nate Oates got there. And then he's turned them into, again, a 2 seed in the tournament. And they're in the Sweet 16 this year. So I would throw the bag and the Indiana Credit Union.
I'd give him a blank check.
Yeah, exactly. I think right now, from what I've heard, Indiana's basically working with a blank check. You have another donor that's willing to help fund, your head coach transition, and most of the buyout is paid for Archie. So Archie was getting paid a top salary anyways to begin with. So now you have a blank check plus the salary space for a top salary. They basically have a blank check for college basketball. And I would go and get Nate Oates, even though his buyout is like something like $12 million, I think, which is a little crazy, but I think the university would be willing to spend it if he was the choice. I also liked your Chris Beard take. Again, I'm a big Chris Beard fan, have been for a while. I've seen what he's done with transfer guards, and I can't imagine what he would do coming into Bloomington and like the way the transfer portal is going to be this summer. Like, we could go from a team that didn't make the tournament this year with Chris Beard being that coach. I wouldn't be surprised if we were like a 2 seed next year with his ability to bring in transfers and make them work right off the bat. Like, look what Mac McClung has done this year for them. Yeah. He's been sensational. Is there any other names that aren't the big head coaching guys that would entice you at all?
No, just because at this point, I feel like from what AD Scott Olson has said, I feel like that we are going to hire a big name. There's just a list that some are bigger, obviously, some are smaller, another air quotes thing. But I don't see us making a smaller hire. I feel like someone who comes in is going to have a resume that's already built and a name that's already branded. So I feel like that we are going to have to hire a big name. Yeah,
I agree. I was talking about this before the podcast to Jevan. I was going to bring up Jeff Goodman somehow during this podcast. God bless that man's soul, but he has pushed me over the edge this week with some of his takes on IU basketball. He seems like he has a personal vendetta against the fan base, which is never a good thing to have from a national college basketball writer. But what do I know? But to me, they talk about Calbert Chaney, maybe they talked about Quinn Buckner, they talked about Mike Woodson. Fine, I'm okay with Mike Woodson being the coach if everyone says no. I mean, he is the backup emergency pull the parachute red button on the the control console, Mike Woodson, but he should not be the first option. There should be loads of options above him. And some of the national media guys are like saying like Porter Moser. I get it. They're a fun team to watch. Loyola Chicago has made Final Four, and they're a fun team to watch under him. But he's been there for 17 years, and he has 2 tournament appearances. One of them he went to the Final Four, and they're currently in the second one. So that's not a ton of success. Also, low key, I think he might end up at Marquette anyways. So I don't feel like we should be competing for somebody who would go to Marquette when we can compete with all the big boys in college basketball, or even steal a coach away, right? That's what Indiana University should have done. I talked about this last podcast. Is what they should have done from the first place after Bobby Knight left. Is they should have just gone and gotten the best coach. Yes, the last time we did that, we got burnt. And Kelvin Sampson was in over his head and did some things that weren't okay. That doesn't mean every huge hire is going to do that, right, Jevan? Not every huge hire is going to turn into Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah. I was just going to piggyback on that. Like, you say that, and then you look at what Kelvin Sampson is doing now, right? So, like,
yeah,
it's just like you want that big name because there are so many great things that come with that. And you look at the list that, we've just talked about. Nate Oates. We didn't really touch on Scott Drew, which is another possibility. And then Chris Beard, John Beilein, Brad Stevens. That's a pretty solid list, and they are all big names. So I just feel like it has to come from one of those lists. But as I said before the podcast, watch us go out and hire somebody that we haven't even talked about yet.
We haven't even talked about Thad Matta yet. Well, actually, I guess I brought him up earlier for his physical or lack thereof with the athletic department. Coach K is not coming to IU, Chris Billings, by the way. If you want to chat with us, we have a live chat. You can come in and chat with us. No, Coach K is not coming to IU, I promise. He is happy in Durham, North Carolina. I saw his assistant, by the way, John Shire, was up for possibly the Marquette job, which would be interesting because I am friends with a bunch of Duke fans, and they all say that he's the coach in waiting, kind of like Dane Fife. So there's another IU name. Possibly Dane Fife is in for it. Again, I'd be fine with Dane Fife as well, but that's if everybody, like all the top Power 5 conference coaches, say no. Let me throw another name at you, Jevan. All right, from left field. What about Scott Drew? Right? Not from left field, right? We talked about him before. We haven't talked in depth about him. But what do you think of Scott Drew?
Well, so honestly, I wasn't very familiar with Scott Drew before becoming a fan of college basketball, and that has been within the last 2 or 3 years. So really, what I see of Scott Drew comes from this year. And when you look at that Baylor team, top to bottom, they are all players who can go out and be productive on a court, right?
Yeah.
So I look at that team and I think, well, we're a team in IU who saw production from 3 or 4 constant players who constantly showed that they could have production on a court.
Right.
So I look at Scott Drew and I say, he's on that list. He's on the bottom of that list in my opinion, but he's still on that list. So he's not someone if we hire I'm going to be upset with. He's someone if we hire I'm going to be optimistic and looking towards the future and saying this could be a really good thing. It's just that in my opinion, he's at the bottom of that 6 or 7 big names list.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, like you said, he's had recent success, and they are a fantastic team, and they are great. They might win the national title this year. Like, they are that good. Jared Butler is that good of a basketball player. But he's also had some stinkers, some really bad years. It's like the Crean effect, right? Like, Crean had some fantastic teams. And then he had the Noah Vonleh year where you're like, why are you not in the tournament? So, let's be honest, people. We're looking for a more consistent winner. Beard is that. Oates seems to be that. Again, it's very early on in his career, but he seems to be that. Thad Matta was that. We haven't really talked about him a whole lot. I brought him up 3 times. I said we haven't talked about him, but seriously, he is a good option if he was healthy and whatever. So, and it's funny that people thought that he actually had a physical, because it's actually to me, I was like, that's the most realistic, gullible rumor of all time. Like, if any coach is going to have a physical, it would be Thad Matta. So that kind of made sense to me. I'm really glad that wasn't true. Of course, I'd be happy if he was the coach. I ended up being the coach because he's actually pretty young. Like, Thad Matta looks to me from like a young guy, like he's like 75, but he's actually 53. Somehow, I don't understand. So he's a really young guy. He's got probably 16 years, 17 years left coaching before he's going to want to put it down. So I would be fine with him as well. Any last thoughts, Jevan, on the coaching situation? We've talked for probably about 15 minutes about it. We have other couple podcasts about it. So if you want to go check those out, go and listen to the previous ones.
Jevan. We're just tying it all together back to the whole Armaan Franklin thing, right? Like, this is something, if you're Armaan Franklin, he spoke to AD Scott Dolson this morning before he entered the transfer portal. So that makes you think that adds a whole other branch to making you think of who our coach is going to be in the whole Armaan Franklin thing. But I said something in our group chat earlier today, and I said that depending on who our coach is also going to impact another player, and that's Trayce Jackson-Davis.
Yeah.
Because I think that if Armaan Franklin is gone, I think 100% Trayce Jackson-Davis is gone. And I said it's not because of the way they play together, but it is that friendship and that bond that they have built, which I think a lot of players on this team have. It just hasn't really shown on the court in their play. But like Trayce and Armaan are literally like tied together. Best friends. So I just think depending on who our hire is, will not only impact Armaan and the rest of the team, obviously, but Trayce Jackson-Davis initially, our best player, could be affected the most by our hire, and that is maybe he transfers if we don't hire the right coach. And because we've talked, and he's not necessarily ready for the NBA at this point. So it's important. I know we stress it a lot, but this is one of the bigger decisions that have ever been made by IU, in my opinion.
For sure. No, you're right. The program is definitely at a crossroads right now where they can't afford to mess it up. So, you might add, how are we going to win this coaching hire? Well, we don't know, but we can tell you who won the week this past week in IU sports, and that's IU women's basketball. They crushed VCU 63-32 on Monday, the fourth ever tournament win for the team, third for Terry Morin. Berger had 20 points. Patberg added 17. Holmes added another 14. 32 points allowed is the lowest by any Big Ten team ever in tournament play and the lowest of any of the 32 first-round winners. IU plays Belmont, a 13 seed, Wednesday at 5 Eastern time on ESPNU for a chance for a shot at the Sweet 16. Belmont beat, I believe it was Gonzaga.
Yeah, there's an upset. They beat Gonzaga.
Yeah, they beat Gonzaga as a 13 seed. As a 12 seed, because IU was a 4 seed and 13 seed. Well, the women's basketball program took care of the 13 seed they played, unlike Purdue men's basketball. So we can all take our hats off and props to them. Good job to the women. They play tomorrow. That's Wednesday. Some of you guys will be listening to it on Wednesday, I'm sure, at 5 Eastern time on ESPNU. So make sure you guys watch that. If you would like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all our information by following us on Twitter at IndianaHQ and at the Hoosier Sound. If you are enjoying our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share links. Your support really helps us grow to reach other passionate IU fans such as yourself. So, speaking of Purdue losing the NCAA tournament, Jevan, what are your thoughts on this crazy, absurd NCAA tournament that's been going on that starts back up again on Saturday?
This tournament thus far has made up for not having one last year.
For sure.
I know we touched on this a little before the podcast started, but I saw something on social media, and it was if you take the average of the number of seed that every team moving into the Sweet 16 has and take the average of it, it's the highest it's ever been. I think it's like almost 6. It's like 5.6, like 5.6 or 5.7. It's literally been the year of the upsets. I mean, in a year where we've had the craziest college basketball, craziest sports, and just craziest year we've ever really seen, of course, why not have the craziest tournament? Like it's the cherry on top. It's what we should have expected. I had Illinois winning the whole thing in my bracket. So there goes my
too.
we talked about it on social media. I said, Illinois is really going to go win the Big Ten and national championship, aren't they? And you said, yep. And they got one of them done, but not that last one. Of course, I mean, Ohio State losing, I guess second day. That killed everybody's brackets. But when you look at it, I mean, what more could you ask for? Really? I mean, it's college basketball at its best. This is why people don't like NBA basketball as much as they like college basketball, because there are no upsets necessarily whenever you watch NBA playoffs. When you watch college basketball, anybody can win on any given night.
Yep.
And that's been on full display this past weekend. So I've enjoyed it, and I can't wait for next weekend.
What's your favorite upset so far?
I gotta say Loyola over Illinois, even though that's who I had winning. Just because, because I'm from Terre Haute, Indiana, so I'm a Missouri Valley. I grew up watching the Missouri Valley Conference, Indiana State in the Missouri Valley. So it's always good to see someone that I got to see growing up have success in the tournament. And of course, the whole Sister Jean thing, like it's just cool, the whole thing. So I would definitely say that the Loyola win over Illinois.
Yeah, I think it's hilarious. Every time Sister Jean is on the TV, my mom lights up like a Christmas tree. She's so happy. She's like, oh my God, it's Sister Jean. I think it's the coolest thing. Loyola. Like once Adeline Christian and Oral Roberts absolutely destroyed my bracket, I was like full send on pure chaos. And I'm glad because I enjoy it. Like I seriously, like the first day I take it so seriously. Like I am vehemently rooting for me to get the round of 64 correct. Like I want to be right. And then Ohio State had to go and lose to Oral Roberts. And I was like, that's it. By the way, crazy that Oral Roberts is in the Sweet 16. As a 15 seed is in the Sweet 16. They are playing out of their minds right now.
Everybody should be rooting for them.
They are the Cinderella. They fit the class slipper on them. We're not going to talk about Syracuse being a Cinderella. Us as IU fans are very used to Syracuse teams beating people unexpectedly in the tournament. Loyola has a better program than we do. It's embarrassing.
This year?
Yeah, this year they do. They don't have a better program overall. They have 2 NCAA tournament appearances in like 50 years. So I wouldn't entirely qualify that as a better program. Though they do have a more recent Final Four appearance than we do. So I guess that is fairly embarrassing. But I think that's more indicative of how easy it is some years to get to the Final Four and how hard it is to usually get to the Final Four in the first place. But yeah, I'm trying to think about the NCAA tournament right now, and a lot of things are failing me. But I know one thing, and that is Purdue's out. And that was a bit of a surprise. Again, the Big Ten has been overall a little bit of embarrassing this year, right?
It's been very embarrassing.
1 out of 9 teams made the Sweet 16, and that includes Iowa as a 2 seed and Ohio State as a 2 seed losing, and 1 seed Illinois losing, as we previously mentioned. Crazy.
I expected a lot more out of the Big Ten. I mean, you look at the regular season that they've had, and they were put up on that pedestal as possibly the best conference in college basketball. But you also have to look at it and you have to say they played each other all year. It was a battle each and every night. We've heard that so many times watching Big Ten game after Big Ten game this year. It's a battle each and every night. Longevity becomes a thing, and you can't really do that every single night and hope to have success down the road. Like your bodies don't last that long. Yep. And so you have to take that into effect, but you also just have to win when it matters most. And when you look at teams like Ohio State, Purdue, Illinois, and 8 out of the 9 teams that were in the Big Ten that aren't in the tournament anymore, they just didn't do that. So I would say, as someone who's in the Big Ten at IU, I think everyone's kind of rooting for Michigan. Even that's weird to say. It just felt weird coming out of my mouth. Yeah. But at this point, it's kind of like, we need someone to represent the Big Ten well, and Michigan is the only team left that can do that.
That's fair. Yeah, and Michigan's a 1 seed again, and has a very good chance of winning the national championship. They looked really good in the game that they just recently played.
They do, and Isaiah Livers isn't even back yet.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. They're going to get an upgrade, hopefully, for next weekend when they play. But, yeah, just Last thoughts on NCAA tournament? Anything else left to add? Got any predictions for next week? Does Oral Roberts make the Final Four?
No, so the team that I wanted, I have a team and player that I want to take away good things from this past weekend that I watched. And that team is Alabama. We talked about it, Nate Oates. We talked about the whole connection there. But, like, when you watch that team, you mentioned Jelly JQ, Jevan Quinterly. That I know him as Jelly JQ because I watched him in high school, and he started the whole Jelly Fam thing with the fancy layups and all that kind of stuff. So I followed him since his junior year of high school. He was a McDonald's All-American, went to Villanova, didn't get the playing time he wanted, so he decided to put his name in the transfer portal, and it has worked out marvelously this year, obviously. Had a double-double with points and assists in their game yesterday. That team, like you said before, is just so fun to watch. And the pace that they play with, the style they play with, they're very up-tempo. It just seems like there are teams that play basketball, and there are teams that have fun playing basketball while they do it. And they are the team that has fun. But the player that I want to talk about, someone that's very, very we know who he is, Justin Smith. Yeah. When we got rid of him last year, not when we got rid of him, when he entered the transfer portal last year.
We got rid of him. Skipped him off.
In my head, I was thinking addition by subtraction, right? I thought Indiana was going to be a better team because we were getting rid of somebody who, again, we were letting someone walk who couldn't space the floor. Yeah. And you see him succeed at a school like Arkansas because the people around him space the floor. And then he goes and has games in like the round of 64 where he has 29 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. First player in Arkansas history to do that in a tournament game. I mean, throughout their first 2 games, he's been the best player on their team. And it's honestly not very close. So Justin Smith is a player that I'm going to keep watching until his time is done at Arkansas, which I hope they keep going. But for my Final Four, do you want to hear my Final Four?
Yeah, go ahead.
My Final Four, Gonzaga, obviously, they are dominant. We haven't even talked about them. There's no reason to. They're just wiping the floor with everybody they play. Yeah. Baylor, I like Baylor. Yep. Alabama, I'm real big on Alabama. And Loyola Chicago. Why not? Let's see the Final Four one more time. But games this weekend, I skipped over this. For this next weekend to watch, USC versus Oregon. USC is a very good team. They have the Mobley brothers, and Oregon is a team that we watched against Iowa. They're very up-tempo as well. So the defensive USC team versus the high-octane up-tempo Oregon team is going to be something that's very fun to watch. And also the Michigan-Florida State game. Just a good ACC Big Ten battle game that I'm excited to watch. But, yeah, Alabama, Loyola, Baylor, and Gonzaga.
I'll tell you my Final Four. And Big Ten fans might not be happy to hear this, but I actually have Gonzaga, Baylor, Houston, ouch, Kelvin Sampson's in the Final Four, and Florida State in the Final Four. I think Florida State's length and size is going to disrupt a lot of what Alabama does and what a lot of Michigan does. And especially if Livers isn't back by the time they play Alabama, or by the time they play Florida State this weekend, they're going to be in a tough time because that Florida State team gets up down the floor really fast. We saw them again earlier this year when we played them. And I got a bunch of FSU fans that, from around here in Florida. I got to rep the home state. So I'm going to be rooting for them for the rest of the tournament. So quickly, I'm glad you brought up Justin Smith, by the way, because it was my job. Nathan wanted me to make sure that I shouted out our weekly podcast poll over on the Hoosier Sound Twitter. So go follow us on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound. But our poll this week was, are you happy to see Justin Smith succeed at Arkansas, especially in the NCAA tournament? It seems you were happy, Jevan, to see him succeed. I am also happy, and that makes us part of the majority, which is 91.9% of people are happy to see him. For the 8% of you that aren't unhappy to see him succeed at Arkansas, shame on you.
Yeah, stop being bitter.
Yeah, shame on you. Shame on you. That we should always be happy for our players to go off and succeed. I mean, look at Denise. He's not playing a lot of minutes at Loyola Chicago, but he might make the Final Four according to Jevan. So better than not making the tournament at all. Cries. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be it for our show tonight. That's our 88th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You all are beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes such as the one you just heard today, be sure to follow at IndianaHQ to make sure you don't miss any in the future. Or go to our website, IndianaHQ.com, to find it all in one place. Lastly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow the podcast to reach more passionate IU fans, such as yourself. But, as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.